I headed to the hills after learning of my wife's affair.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another wild story from the corners of the internet. For more, make sure to gently smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Let's dive into it.
I, 30 male, discovered my 30 female wife's affair after we had been married for 3.5 years. I had a contract job that involved a lot of travel at times, but also allowed me to work from home when I was back. My wife had a very well-paying job as a director of a technical sales firm. We had what I would describe as a really good marriage, although things had gotten a bit strained from my being away on work trips and her working longer and longer hours. Backstory, I met my wife, now ex, 5 years ago at a mutual friend's barbecue. We struck up a conversion and had an instant chemistry, and quite honestly, I thought I was beating the odds being with such a beautiful and well-spoken woman. Somehow, she really liked me for my rough-around-the-edges persona. Once we dating after a few weeks, we couldn't get enough of each other, and the clothes just flew off when we would meet at each other's apartments. We finally tied the knot after dating for 18 months and moved into a big apartment while saving for a house. After the first 3 years of marriage, things started changing. I still was crazy about her, but I noticed she would start arguments about little things, and she would get angry when I would bring up all the late hours and the work outings that had been more and more frequent. She would say it's part of paying the dues since she had been climbing the corporate ladder, or at least that was her excuse. She told me I had no right to question her since I was gone for weeks at a time myself. I had told her I could certainly manage reducing my travel hours, and had actually only been going on trips maybe 3-4 days every 5 weeks or so. These arguments were very circular and never had a resolution. As I look back, I had no idea my wife was in the midst of an affair. I would have never suspected a thing, except for her continued late work hours and our dwindling sex life. I just attributed this to her being tired from work. However, my ego had taken a beating from being turned down frequently when trying to initiate sex. I didn't see the secretive texting that I read about, but then again, she had a company cell phone and she could have been using it since she spent a lot of time in our spare bedroom that she would use as a home office. It was around September of 2017 when Kathy started coming home after work and then head off to a work engagement for the evening. This went from 1 evening a week to more than 3 evenings a week. I'm not that jealous by nature, but there is no way she would go unnoticed, and I know she would have to fend off some of the men at her office. She only seemed to be interested in work, but she was working with more male executives than female. My first suspicion of her cheating occurred a month before D-Day. She had stopped off at the store before coming home. She asked me to help with the groceries. While I was grabbing a couple bags from the back seat of her car, I noticed something pink glinting from just underneath the front passenger's seat. It was one of my wife's bras. I recognize it as hers since she liked the ones from a particular apparel store. In retrospect, I now realize the reason for the red flag with the bra. When she gets in the mood, she always takes off her bra first, from underneath her clothes. I don't know exactly why, but I instantly just had a sinking feeling in my gut when I saw this. I could not rationalize what her bra was doing under the seat. I just left it there under the seat. It almost made me sick, and my heart must have been racing like crazy, because when I returned to the kitchen with the bags, Kathy asked if I was okay, and that I looked like I had seen a ghost. I just brushed her comment off. I tried my best not to look angry or betrayed, but it took all I had to hide my feelings. That evening and the next, I decided to see if I could find out if she was involved with someone or not. I started thinking about all the clues I was missing. I had no proof except for the bra incident. We live in a fairly large city, and her work is in a downtown office building. I kind of took my focus off of the affair idea for a bit and decided maybe I should give her more attention. One Friday after work, I made a nice dinner, set up the dining table with nice plates, silverware, and candles. I bought a nice bottle of wine and a bouquet of roses. She came breezing in after work as usual. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had prepared. She gave me a sad smile and told me she was sorry, but she had plans to meet up with her coworkers tonight at a local hangout. She said she could grab a quick bite with me before she left, but had to jump in the shower first. I think my insides flipped on me, and I became completely speechless. I won't tell you what kind of rage I was feeling at that point, but I had finally had enough. While she was in the shower, I grabbed my company cell phone and planted it in her back seat. I had been thinking of this lately as a way I could track her location with my personal phone. I went in and dumped the meal in the trash along with the flowers. She came back after her shower dressed up and looking great as usual. She said, "Okay, let's eat." I told her, "Never mind, go out with your friends." She looked at me strangely and asked if I was mad. I said, "I'm disappointed by you never wanting to do anything together." She became angry and told me to quit, acting like a child, and that's something snarky about having a short fuse. I stood there, letting all this sink in and said, "Foolish me, I thought you'd like to spend the evening together for once." She just smirked at me and left in a huff. I took out my other phone and started tracking my work phone. I saw her stop about 20 minutes away at the bar that she frequents with her work buddies. I decided to head out and locate her car. Sure enough, there it was in the parking lot of the bar. I sat across the street in my car waiting to see if I could see her. I felt so unlike myself, like a stalker. But I rationalized I needed to at least satisfy my anxiety about her whereabouts. About an hour after I arrive, I see her coming out of the bar with a man. He looks like one of the execs I've seen from her work. He grabs her and pulls her close and kisses her. My stomach went into knots. My body went completely numb. They head over to another car and get in together. I do my best to follow them as the car pulls out. They travel about 10 minutes away to, you guessed it, a hotel. I pull over on the street next to the hotel. I watch as they get out and head hand in hand into the hotel. I've seen enough. I'm an idiot. I start banging my fist on the steering wheel. That's it. Something inside me went completely blank, and I'm not sure if I blacked out or had an out-of-body experience. When I recovered myself, I decided I needed a drink. Now, this is when my life took a new direction that I would have never guessed. I just started driving out of town, just reliving everything I had just witnessed, and I hate to say, crying with rage. I headed towards the outskirts of town, about 30 miles. I find a nice little bar and pull in. I find a seat at the bar and order a drink. I must have looked like death warmed over, because the bartender, female, mentioned that I look like someone took the wind out of my sails. I half smiled and said, "You could say that." A guy takes a stool next to me and starts up a conversation. I'm not in much of a mood to talk, but something about this guy just made me feel comfortable. We start talking, and after a while, the subject of my wife cheating just tumbles out of my mind. How I just want to leave her and forget her. He looks at me and slaps me on the back. He says, "Buddy, you are not alone there." It happened to me a few years ago. I believe that sometimes these things happen for a reason. And let me tell you, your life can now change either for the better or the worse. It's entirely up to you at this point. Something about him saying this really shook me out of my glum mood. I mean, I know I'm hurting, but I have always been able to see things logically, and he is so right. Now we introduce each other. His name is Ray. He is kind of a country guy, but is just the sort of salt-of-the-earth type that I really respect. He asks me when I'm going to move out. I guess it never occurred to me to even think that far ahead. I know I don't want to be around this woman anymore, and I do have this fight-or-flight feeling coursing through me. Ray says, "I feel very sympathetic to your situation and have an idea. If it comes to it, and you feel like you need to leave at some point, I've got a travel trailer sitting on my property. It's not great, and it could use a bit of fixing up. Why don't you come out and check it out and see if you could see yourself living in something like that, temporarily at least. I'll make you a great deal on it. I even have a nice piece of property that you could park it on. You would be doing me a favor to keep an eye on it for me. It might do you some good to get away from your situation. Just a thought." It took me a minute to register his idea. The bartender had been overhearing the conversation and smiles. "Hell, honey," she says, "if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer. Anything to just get my head on straight. I feel like I have stumbled into the twilight zone, but maybe this is exactly what I need." I tell Ray, "Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out." We part ways after a bit and make plans to meet out at his place in a few days. I started to feel like I have a little bit of perspective and a chance for getting out of what I believe is a nightmare, mixed in with a heavy heartache. One thing is for certain. There is no way I'll ever want to be with my wife again. Cheating is such a vile thing to me and has always been the one thing that I believe I would never tolerate. I got home after Kathy that night and sat on the couch. Kathy came out and asked me where I'd been. I turned to her and asked her where she had been. She says, "You know I went to grab drinks." I asked her point blank, "Are you having an affair?" She looks a little startled but regains her composure and says, "No." "Why would you ask me that?" I tell her I heard she may be involved with someone from work. She asks, "Who told you that?" I tell her someone that I know but would not divulge the name. She just tells me you are being ridiculous and that I'm drunk and delusional, and asks me where I have been. I tell her out to a bar to have some drinks with friends. She just stares at me, wanting to ask me more, but just heads back to our bedroom and goes back to bed. I decided to sleep on the couch, since I now have confirmation that she has been lying for months to me. I didn't sleep at all, and start picturing her with this guy in bed, and I'm disgusted and hurt and feeling sorry for myself. However, I start thinking about Ray's trailer. It is almost a revelation, and the idea of it just made me feel better. I must have something wrong with me, but with the pain I was in, the fight-or-flight mode just instinctively kicked in, and the flight part won me over. The next morning, we don't speak much and go about the weekend as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I made plans to meet up with Ray. I met up at Ray's place. He owns a nice ranch, and the trailer is actually really nice, about 26 cents, and has all the necessities one needs to live in it. I had traveled with some friends in one back in college during a spring break and really enjoyed it. I make Ray an offer on it, and he agrees to the price. I practically steal it from him. He gives me directions to his ranch property, and I drive over to check it out. It is beautiful, full of trees, scrub brush, and it looks like there are nearby hiking and biking trails bordering it. It's near the foothills of some mountains, and Ray has a small shack on a hill overlooking the property, with water and electricity for the trailer available. Ray will pull the travel trailer to the site and set it up for me.
Subscribe and ring the bell for more wild stories. See you next time.